Funny thing happened on the way to my life. My heart's been broken more times than you can believe. My dreams have been stepped on all over the place. And you know what? Everything's perfect. So, when I was 8 years old, I wanted to be Bob Hope. The golf club, the USO tours, that savoir-faire, the funny movies. I just loved Bob Hope. And I thought, I am going to be America's greatest comedian ever. And so, 8 years old, I start cracking wise at grade school. And it's, I get in trouble for it. But every once in a while, I say something surprising, so surprising that it sort of goes through the fact that I'm breaking the rules. Everybody laughs, everybody's happy, and the teacher lets me get away with it. And that shift in the room, when that happened, was like heroin. Not that I know about heroin. But seriously, it's such a wonderful high. And I pursued it at school and stuff, but there's not much you can do when you're 8, 9, 10 years old to do comedy. I grew up in Cincinnati, and there wasn't even a comedy club in Cincinnati until 1981. So all these years, I'm just farting around, and my parents don't let me get involved in theater and that sort of thing. So I started writing secretly up in my attic, on my little notebook, and I'd hid it in the floor and that sort of thing. And when I was a senior in high school, I conned the principal of the school into allowing me to be the PA announcer for the morning announcements and the evening announcements. And most of the time I had to do it, straight. But every once in a while, when I knew he wasn't listening, I would do some impressions. So I'd say things like Walter Brennan. Some of you remember who that is. Well, by God, son, Paul Geraci, Brother Ham wants to see you in the phys ed room after school. And I'd hear laughs in all the classrooms around the school. Again, heroin addiction. I also did John Wayne sometimes. So that one was more like, I'm trying to think of an example. Those of you guys who want to try out for the track and field team should report to Mr. Sinchak after school. And then there was the tennis team's announcement from Kirk Douglas, excuse me. So it's the tennis team got beat by St. Xavier 3-2. It makes me sick. So I'm in college, and I fart around for a couple of years as an English major, and that was fun. But I saw that they had a broadcasting school at the University of Cincinnati, so I transferred to broadcasting, thinking maybe someday that I would be like a well-paid TV host, or maybe a film director or something like that. And the first day I got to the broadcasting school, everybody was sort of passing out 8x10 glossies, and they had, briefcases with, really polished audition tapes. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know if this is going to work out. And I actually did work in broadcasting for a few years. I didn't make any money at all. I went broke working in broadcasting. I did have one brief brush with greatness when I got a substitute job as the host for a game show called Screen Test, where you at home can play along with our studio contestants and win big prizes tonight on Screen Test. Here's your host, Craig Fraley. So that went over big, but here's what happened. I got fired from that job. I did a pretty good job. The ratings were actually pretty good. But then somebody in New York said, well, we've got to get somebody a little bit more show busy. So they hired a clown. Literally a clown. Flippo, the ping pong nose, the full suit, the whole thing. And so I was replaced by a clown. It was an honor, kind of. So then a funny thing happened. they opened a comedy club in Cincinnati. They joined the Modern World, and you could go and do stand-up. And so I went and did stand-up. Now, this was over the objections of almost everyone I knew. Every friend said, just don't do it, you'll make an ass of yourself. My father claimed he would disown me, and he practically did, for getting up on stage. But I did it anyway because it was the connection to my dream of being Bob Hope and being that great comedian. And so here's the thing, when I started doing stand-up, I was really bad. I was horrible bad. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. It was so bad. I could tell a few jokes and stuff like that, but it just didn't go well overall. And I died like the Hindenburg more times than I can tell you. But example, I'm in Cleveland and I'm opening 5-minute little bit for a guy who actually gets paid. And it was a late night show, and I was the first one on, and I was getting heckled unmercifully. And there was a guy in the back, he was shouting obscenities. I mean, everyone you can think of. But the one that really hurt is he says, "Get off the stage! You're not funny!" And then a guy in the front, right in the front, got up and shouted back at him, "Shut up! Give the asshole a chance!" So, somewhere along the way, though, I had a moment. I said, well, what did I do when I was a kid and I got laughs in school? I said, I did something surprising. And so I started reframing my act around shock and surprise. And that started going better. It was starting to work. Now, remember, this is like 1981, and political, correctness was not a thing then. This was the days of Sam Kinison and those crazy guys who said, Dice Clay. Oh my gosh, you look at those acts today and you wonder how they ever got away with it. And so I have to admit that some of the stuff I did was pretty bad. I would never do it again, but I'll tell you about it. But I want your forgiveness, like flat out. So one of the bits I did that went very well was a parody song of the Patty Duke theme song. Now, I can't remember all the words, but the chorus part was, and their parents use them for bookends and lock them in closets all day. They were the remedial cousins, not the identical cousins. And I won't tell you about the, if Sam on Bewitched, the what if part, if Sam on Bewitched had leprosy, she'd do that nose thing and it would fall off. Anyway, I won't tell you about the rest of them. I just wouldn't be good. But so then something else was going on in my life. I had gotten married just around the same time I started doing comedy. And my wife did not like this idea at all. Not from the start, not through my ups and downs. She just kept trying to tell me, do not do this, get out of this. And finally, she gave me the ultimatum. And by the way, I had a 6-month-old daughter too, right? She said, you either quit doing comedy or we're getting divorced. And I had to think about it for a minute, but I actually decided to quit comedy and dedicate myself to being a good father and husband and take care of my wife and daughter. And so for like 25 years, pretty much I didn't do stand-up comedy again. However, secretly, I was writing again. And so I started writing and I started exploring that concept, that whole thing that happens in comedy when the room shifts, and that whole thing that happened to me when I kind of got through my little arc of getting a little better at comedy, about how do you create that shift? How do you create the surprise? How do you come up with a good idea? And I realized that there's a bigger concept going on here. It's called creativity. So I started studying creativity and reading books about it and trying creativity techniques. And then I got involved in improv in Chicago at Players Workshop, the Second City, which changed my life because it gave me all the games and tools that you can think about to have people shift their thinking and how to create something on the spot. So, where am I with this? So, I published a book about creativity, and that got me some inquiries to speaking. So I started doing some public speaking, and I had no trouble doing that at all because I wasn't afraid of any crowd. I'd been heckled in Cleveland, right? And so it wasn't difficult. So I did some TEDx talks. I did some other writing. I had a blog. I was one of the first podcasters in the creativity space. Did very well with that. And I moved out here to Harbor Country and doing my weekly improv thing right next door at the Village Hall every Thursday night. You should come, 7 o'clock. And so here's my bottom line on all this. Your heart's desires, the things you really want most in life, it's a little bit like water. It finds its level. If you pursue your heart's desire, over time, somehow, some way, you'll satisfy your heart, and you'll have everything you need and want, and everything will be perfect. Thank you very much.